feeling that ability to depend on one's self. How do you have that second chance at love?
Welcome to Thrivist, where we share real stories, psychology, practical wisdom, and hope. We're here to inspire you with stories of overcoming and the lessons people learn along the way. We believe in humanity, and we know that we can all build resilience and thrive. Or at least low-key thrive at best.
Well, welcome to Thrivist. And we are getting ready to jump into a conversation where AudrieAna took the lead on interviewing Andrea Steele. And Andrea was a very articulate woman who is just really living life with a sense of resilience and awe, and really brought her story with us. So thanks for bringing her into our space today, AudrieAna. I know she is someone you had a personal connection with.
Yeah. I was really happy when she reached out and said she'd be willing to be a guest. I've just known her for a few years, and people will get to know why we know each other if they listen on. But I think in this podcast, we're going to hear about dating after divorce. Divorce is very challenging. We work with clients, Emily, who are going through something that's very, very difficult, brings a lot of grief, big transition. And she talks about what she really wants listeners to know is the process of dating after divorce is really difficult as well. And she had a lot to say about that. So that's what you're going to be hearing. And then the other thing that I noticed is how much she's used therapy in her life. I mean, she's not afraid to talk about it, not afraid to share, personally what the things that she's addressing in therapy. And you can tell, I mean, she definitely has used it before her divorce, after her divorce, and then now in her new marriage, which is just amazing how she's leaning into that resource. What did you come away with after listening to this?
I thought it was so hilarious how she said she's from New York. She's living, and we interviewed her in California, but she's from New York, and she said everybody has a therapist. It's like nothing that we don't just talk about regularly. Just having a smoothie for lunch. You have a therapist. So I thought that was cute, and I certainly think there are cultural areas of more acceptance in our field. And so I thought that was interesting. But as we were preparing, and I knew we were talking about a topic that touches so many lives, AudrieAna, I looked to see what are the current stats around divorce in our country. Yeah. And they used to be at, over 50%. They've actually decreased, and they're actually at 42% now in our country. Okay. Of individuals that are going to walk through this in life. So you're going to walk through a huge grief. Most of the time can be unexpected and something that's going to change the trajectory forever. You can't undo. And so I felt like it was encouraging, though, probably for various reasons, to know that those numbers are going down.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't read that, so I appreciate that you are bringing that to this conversation. I have some thoughts about why that might be, but we're not going to go into that right now. I want to have the listeners think about what are some of the pillars of thriving that they're going to hear that Andrea leaned into. And we didn't really go through those with her, but if you have not listened to our first few podcasts, we go through 10 pillars that we think are really important to learn how to thrive and to build resilience in this world. Yes. And one of them that really stood out to me, Emily, was number 4, which is work your pain or you will blame. And so I want listeners to be thinking about that pillar and how Andrea used that. You will find that she is not blaming others or even this experience for what she's gone through. She has really decided to use it to strengthen herself. And, she talks about just a dark season that she went through, but it really was about her taking responsibility for getting resources that she needed and leaning in to what was helping. So I appreciated that she was using that. Work your pain or you will blame.
Yes, that was really inspiring to see, because we know there is a great amount of pain and loss, especially when family and marriage means a lot to a person. So it's not a slow process. It can be a long process of working pain to get to a point of being healthy enough after a divorce to then say, I'm ready to be open again to find love. And that's a question I think that many healthy people are wondering today after divorce is, am I ready? How do I know when I'm ready to get back out there? What would that even look like? I'm not in college anymore. I'm now midlife. And so she speaks to that. Andrea shares
Right.
a little about what that was like for her. And I think that will be so helpful. She also shared the first pillar of building resilience and being resilient. And we really saw her speak to that when she talked about, I'm not going to stay quiet. I'm at a point in my life where I want to hunker down when we go through hard things and kind of hide. But I'm not going to stay quiet. I'm really going to lean into my supports and I'm going to use my words and I've got to get this out. And so she did. So she really was resilient in that way. And she also faced her overwhelm of her creating a new normal, this new normal of, wow, how do I become single again? How do I be a single mom? Oh, wow, now I'm going through therapy and I'm open again to love. And how do I enter remarriage and then additional family members? And so she really shared how she navigated that. And it really is an art form in every family on how we navigate and how we hold all the different pieces. And I really enjoyed how she shared that with us.
Yeah. And she really did highlight like we're all unique and we all do this a little differently, right? There was some talk about comparison being something that steals our joy, and when she finally owned that this is the way I need to go through it instead of comparing myself to how other people are going through it, that really was a turning point for her. So that was good to hear.
Yeah,
So
my other favorite thing that I think I saw in Andrea is an attitude or a posture of just kind of cultivating awe in her life right now. A sense of like, wow, yeah, I made it through that. I went through that. That was really hard. And I'm even willing to talk about it. I'm
Yeah.
hoping to inspire someone else with it. And I've now been changed by it. My world has been changed. And then I'm now looking at how to be a parent and be a step parent. And in that, as she's really cultivating awe, we know awe is a very powerful emotion. It actually decreases our stress every day. When we take in awe, it actually decreases our ruminating and our thinking on all the negative thoughts that can so easily, take pay rent in our brain, as they say. So, and it actually builds our resilience all the time to be able to cultivate awe in our lives and do the work that takes. And sometimes that takes a while to get to a point where we're in awe again of our story, but the story does flip. The pages of the story do flip. And she's in that place now where I see her cultivating more of an attitude of awe with it all.
Yeah, I love that you pulled that out because I that thinking about awe as an emotion, we don't really think about very often. We think about gratitude and contentment, but there is a sense of awe in how she's looking at her story and really looking at her future with a sense of curiosity and discovery and awe of this new season of life that she's in. So we hope that you all really enjoy this conversation with Andrea Steele. And please feel free to put comments and share and encourage others to listen.
All right, ladies. Well, great to be with you both. I am happy to introduce Andrea P. Steele. And I'll read her bio to us for a moment. Andrea is a learning and development specialist in the sales organization at a global CPG company where she designs experiences that help people grow and perform at their best. She's also a YouTube creator, and her vlogs center around cultivating a calm, grounding space while sharing her lived experiences. She has a particular interest in how modern families navigate change. How do they do this with intention and emotional clarity? She's a mother to a young child. She is newly remarried and redesigning a life with a new family dynamic. Andrea brings a thoughtful, real world perspective to conversations around growth, relationships, and the learning that exists during times of change. Oh, so
Thank
great to have
you.
you. You are
Thank you so
welcome.
much. I've been really excited about coming on. And I was mentioning this to AudrieAna earlier, but it's like you can be in a certain time of the month as a woman and fill out the questionnaire and see how positive and optimistic you were then. And now you're in a different time of the month doing the actual interview. So we're going to see how this goes. I hope I can still bring a lot of that optimism and positivity. I'm sure I can.
For sure.
So funny.
Oh,
Thank you for just being real, Andrea. And I want to let the listeners know how we ended up having you on the show.
Yeah.
And that's because I met Andrea a few years ago when she started dating a dear friend of ours from college.
Mhm.
And we started hanging out just whenever we would catch up with her husband, now husband.
Yes.
And really enjoyed getting to know Andrea on long walks. You know, when you're on vacation, you slow down. It's not the
Yeah.
regular rhythm of life. So you're like sitting around the dinner table, you're at the lake, you're on long walks. And there were a couple of times that Andrea and I got just one-on-one time.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about you. And one of the things about you I learned is you're very, very reflective
Mm-hmm.
and you're very, very open. And that is something that was I just so delightful about you that and I got to know you pretty
Thank
quickly
you.
just because
Mhm.
you're just a reflective person and you're very comfortable with being in process
Yeah.
rather than having, even though our brains all want to figure things out.
That's right.
But you are very open to that. And so when we started the podcast, Andrea reached out to me and said, you know, I don't remember. Do you remember what you were
Oh, I
kind of
do.
reflecting on?
I
Yeah,
do
you want to
remember. I
say it?
told you about my aversion to the word thriving. And
Ah,
that wasn't all I said, Emily. Okay, I did say some nice things. That
Hey.
wasn't the only thing I said. And then you say that, and you talked about that in an earlier podcast episode, and you shared with me at that time that you had the same kind of initial thoughts and reactions about that word and its definition, and how that's been a journey kind of for you on its own, and why you're very intentional about using that word. So that was a fun kind of mini conversation over Instagram. And then we talked about my being a guest. So that was awesome.
Yeah. No, I was like, when you reached out to me, I said, oh, just wait. You're going to hear about my love-hate
Right.
relationship with the word thrive. So you're not the only one.
Right.
And how we're really trying to redefine it,
Mhm.
really redefine the word and make it one that we can all kind of get more comfortable with because it's
Right.
really more about kind of that gritty, sweaty,
Yeah.
real, real life that we're doing. Like
Yeah,
it's not about
exactly.
being perfect. So, all right. So now everybody knows that we know each other
Yes.
and are friends. And I'm really
Yes,
glad
right.
that Emily got to hear a little bit of the background
Mm.
too. So, so we're just starting out. You know, you have filled out a questionnaire. You did just an amazing job. I can't wait for people to hear from you. But in the beginning, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm thankful for Emily reading out the bio, and I think something that's kind of not in there is, and something AudrieAna, you and I have talked about as we were talking about thriving, we were talking about change, and what does that mean to try to support yourself, during times of change, is that my company is going through tremendous change and acquisitions and mergers and just all these things. And so my colleagues and I have been in that process for much longer than kind of anticipated from us. And everything's going well. And it's just, though, it's very long. It's this very long process. And so kind of been that process has challenged me to think about how can I better support myself during this time. And so that's something that's not in my bio, Emily, but it is something that's kind of really actively going on.
I think you're talking about something that is hard for all of us is change. And when you're talking about all the change at work and the
Yeah,
fact that it's been long and protracted,
right.
right? And I think our brains want resolution.
That's right.
Our brains want, and we want answers, and we all like security, although some people are very, very adventurous. But I can imagine that that's hard, the long protracted, state of change
Yeah.
and not knowing. I'm sure that that's been challenging.
Yeah, it has been. I was joking, my colleagues and I, we work in the food business. And so we're just joking about how I can't keep Trader Joe's red velvet cupcakes in the house during this whole time anymore, because I'm like, I need to figure out a much better way to support myself, because the cupcakes are not they're just not going to ultimately support me at all. And I think it's really been a challenge because like you said, this has been going on for a long time. And you add in the fact that I am in my first year of marriage. Our anniversary is coming up actually pretty soon, which is incredible that it's gone by so fast. But you're not talking about like two 20 somethings who are getting married and don't have children and don't have, all of their things that they bring with them from the past and past marriages. We're both divorced. And so he has 4 adult children. I have a young child who's in kind of early elementary school stage. And so you're bringing in 2 adults who are really combining their lives and figuring out what that looks like. And so it's so funny, our couples counselor, because we're such big fans of therapy. And we started going to counseling before we got engaged. That was really, really important for us to do. And it was very validating, to have our counselor look at us and go, you guys, like, this is really quite a lot in one period of time. Because we also did a home renovation, which you can see the results of in the background. So it's like a home renovation, the stuff at work, it's a new marriage. And then my husband's also kind of working on some other things besides his day job. So it's just been so much that sometimes I kind of say, wow, I think I'm being a little too hard on myself in here when there really is so much to sort through. And I think that's where therapy has been invaluable in really kind of affirming and being able to really kind of see that from this non-object, like someone who's not in my life, kind of being able to listen and say, wow, that is a lot. And what does supporting yourself look like? And what adjustments can you make? What communication can you be having to get your needs met and to even discuss what your needs are? Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for putting it in perspective. Actually, as I think about it and just knowing you and John, I mean, you have had a year of so much change, but you mentioned it and of course, as 2 therapists, we love that you're leaning into therapy. But you mentioned it in here when you telling a little bit about yourself, that you have learned that you are on the neurodivergent spectrum and that you also learned about the Enneagram.
That's right.
And that you also have been a big, strong believer in therapy. These are 3 things that you say about yourself.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about your journey and kind of self-discovery of the last several years?
Yeah.
What's been helpful to you about learning those things about yourself?
Oh my gosh. I think I'll start so therapy, being from New York, you're in therapy. That is a cultural, almost like a cultural thing, that everyone is in therapy forever almost. And so that's very accepted, and there's never any kind of taboo or anything about talking about that. So I'm very open about talking about, there's times where I haven't been in therapy, and then I things, like we say, evolve and change, and you're like, I have some new needs that need to be addressed, and I need that support. And so therapy, I would say, definitely after getting a divorce and going through that divorce experience, needed a lot of support, and knew that I needed that I was also during COVID. So there's just these added layers and these added challenges. And so it's kind of like, okay, really need to figure out how to best support myself during this time. And so finding different support groups and finding a lot of things were not happening. So a lot of resources that would have been available at another time were not. And so something I'm really good at, though, is finding things on the internet. It's like one of my biggest strengths is like finding stuff. And so I was able to cobble things and piecemeal things together and get into therapy. And it was that therapist that was the first one to diagnose me. I'm open with, I have OCD. And I never knew anything about OCD. I knew only what I saw in the movies, and that apparently I learned is only one type of OCD. So this was this big revealing moment because it made many things make sense as I reflected to my childhood and things like that. And so having that diagnosis and then being able to know and try the treatments that are available is life-changing. There's really no other way to say that. That is life-changing to actually have the diagnosis, and everyone can decide what they want to do about their diagnosis. That's amazing about being an adult, right? You kind of find things out about yourself and then decide, how do I want to move in the world now that I have this information? And then I'll talk about the Enneagram. So the Enneagram,
Andrea, before you get to that, I would love to ask you a question because I love, first of all, your openness. Thank you so much for that. There's so many listeners right now that are listening that are thinking, okay, I color coordinate my closet every day. I put my cereal boxes in a certain row. And if they're not, I have to move them. So, we all have a small bit of that, particularly by midlife when you're professional and high achieving. But I'm curious, like what did make sense to you then once you got the diagnosis? What did you start seeing?
My therapist was kind of like, I think we might want to do an assessment, and I might want you to go talk to this other professional and kind of do this formal assessment so you can be diagnosed and we can see. And I was like, okay, I'll do whatever. Like, I'm trusting this person. This person and I have this fantastic dynamic and relationship. And she's great at not really, to your point, Emily, not saying too much. It's almost like she wants me to learn for myself what this means. But I will share one of the things she said was your word choices. So I will fixate on, I want to say exactly the right word. I want to say exactly and be understood in a specific way. And so I'll often say things like, well, that's not really the word I want, but let's go with this, or things like that. It's like this little, I don't even know if fixation's the right word, Emily and AudrieAna, but it is a focus of being like, it needs to be just the right word in this context. And I do kind of start to maybe go a little bit if I feel like it wasn't. And maybe I'm now not being understood the way that I intended. And I'm like, wow, I really do that like a lot,
Yes.
And so it just was this funny, like, wait, that's a thing? Like that thing that I do is actually a thing. And I think that's what, and she, gave me a book to read so that I can then make my own conclusions and read it and go, oh my goodness, like I do this and I have these thoughts and I do this. And I thought that was just me. And similar to that, I was going to bring in the Enneagram. It's actually it's very similar, to be honest. And it was one of those things where I'd heard of it, didn't pique my interest at all. Then I happened to be listening to a podcast of someone I really admired, and they had a guest who was an Enneagram expert who was kind of going through all the numbers. And I heard something and I just broke into tears. It just hit me. And I thought to myself, I have to figure out a little bit more about what this is. And as I learned about it, I wanted to do a much deeper study, because it's about how are you moving through the world? How are you interacting with the people you love the most with what understanding do you have of them, and then what understanding do you have of yourself that actually lets you, talked about communicating a moment ago, that lets you actually communicate better with people and understand yourself more. And so it has been such an amazing tool in my marriage. My husband had never liked the Enneagram because he had done online tests and he didn't like his number. And so my coach, who I worked with, Suzanne Steele, we call her the godmother of the Enneagram. Many Enneagram people will know her. She doesn't believe in online tests. So we got a coach. So we hired like a professional coach that was recommended to us, who had him take an assessment, and then it was an hour-long probing
interview
on those answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we now know what he is, we know what I am, and it's given us this world of language to speak to each other about tendencies. You know, we don't excuse things because of what number you are. You simply use it as a tool to understand why this person might be showing up like this. In this moment.
Yeah, and how they see the world. I mean, you're
Yes.
totally speaking my language. I use the Enneagram with couples as well.
Yes.
And I think
do?
Some people who aren't into it, we're obviously we're not going to use it, but if you are into it, I'm trained in it. And yes, you're right. Suzanne Steele is very well respected. Although I didn't get to train with her, I trained with the narrative Enneagram. But
nice.
I think that's wonderful that you're using that. And it really does help us not judge as quickly or criticize others as quickly, because we're like, it's like, well, this is just your lens and the way that you operate in the world. Again, not excusing it. So how can we learn to communicate and ask for what we need, and still, but with greater understanding and self-awareness?
Yes.
So that's great. Thank you for sharing that part. Let's see. There was something else you said that I thought was so interesting. One of the questions that you answered, what motivates you to do what you do?
Yeah.
Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Oh, I will, because I'm changing it. So,
okay,
you know,
great.
It's so cool to see that, to actually, to see what I wrote. And then between what I wrote and today, I will share, because I shared it on the questionnaire, is I started EMDR therapy, which I was very nervous about, and I still am nervous about. And I had an intake session, and it's like 2 hours long. And that is heavy. Like, that is a doozy. You're going over all this stuff from the past, and you're like, you know, you're like, do I really want to be here? Like, is this really what I want to be investing in? And of course, the answer is yes. But after that, I think it's brought a lot up, and was looking at what I wrote, and some of it is still true. And then I kind of want to add some more. So one of the things that stays the same is my daughter. My daughter is a huge motivation for a very specific thing, which is modeling to her a version of adulthood that is complex, that has many aspects, so she can see what a version of adult womanhood is, and kind of see a woman that is has hobbies and passions and interests, and is very clear with her about, this is mom's time, and this is why I'm doing this, and I'm meeting friends because friendships are very important, and I'm going to see you when I come back, right? So showing my daughter a lot of possibilities about what womanhood could look like, which also includes having her spend time with a lot of other friends and things like that, who have very different lives than I do. So that's one thing that really inspires me, is my daughter. The second thing, which is the new thing, which is, I know that I have so much more to give in this world. I know that I have so much more to do in terms of my impact, and I don't really know what that is. So I'm in this place right now of going, let's see what happens. Kind of, let's see, we're in this process, and let's have that faith in yourself, which I've had to have in the past, that something is going to arrive and something is going to point me in kind of the direction of what I should be doing next. And like, what is my impact going to be in this next chapter of life? So that is something that I'm really motivated by that right now.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, I could summarize that unless Emily, you may,
no,
I'd
go
love to
for
hear
it.
I would
Yes.
love to hear what you're thinking. You're in the process of discovery,
Mhm.
right? You're really curious about what more you want to give to the world.
Yes.
And you've been in a long process of like discovery of yourself and,
Yeah,
new diagnosis and
that's
a
right.
new personality profile that you now understand yourself with the Enneagram and now a new
Right.
marriage and you've
That's
blended two
right.
families. I mean, you've done a lot of new things, a lot of self-discovery, but now it seems like almost your lens is going outward and like, what am I, what would give me a sense of purpose
That's
and
right.
meaning on top of my very full life, right?
Right.
And yet you're okay with that's a discovery, that's a journey. I don't need to figure it out like right now. Is that sounding what
It
like
is.
right?
It is, and it's reminding me of so many times when I was a younger woman and it needed to be right now. And why isn't it right now? And what are my peers doing? And my peers are doing this and they are doing that. And they're at this point in their lives. And why am I not? I think when I turned 40, it was like a magic wand. I don't know what happened. It was like I
Mhm.
stopped caring about anybody else's, and doing that comparison
Mhm.
of where other people are. And I've realized that's part of who I am as a four. That's part of who I am in my wiring and everything is to be someone that is um there's a diverse toolbox. There's a lot of different things that want to be used. There's a lot of different expressions um, that whatever that is, which I don't have the perfect word for, whatever that is,
Mhm.
wants to be expressed in different ways and is okay going, that's going to look different while I'm raising a young child who,
Right.
that's
Yes.
going to look different when I'm, investing time in really devoting starting my marriage in kind of the right way, in a very intentional way.
Mhm.
And it's actually led me to have so much more compassion for so many other women and the lives that they lead and just having so much of a better understanding because I wasn't a wife for a very long period of time. And so it was like I kind of forgot some of the things like, oh my gosh, when you're a wife, it's like you really have to care about all their stuff too. Like you have all these responsibilities that you now need to do. And so that does leave less time for, let's say, having a dinner with a girlfriend and
Right.
going out the way that I used to. So it's these little things that now it's kind of really going,
The right.
it's okay that this is what it's like for this period of time.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. I love what you're saying too, because we have seasons of our life where there's so much within our own four walls, Andrea,
Mm-hmm.
that you're getting your footing around and getting language for
Right.
and holding, if you will. And you're
Yes.
saying, yes, I've been doing that. And now I'm looking outward again. There's
Yep.
something outward that is external outside
Mm-hmm.
that really is rewarding to you, that you
Yeah.
are really feeling drawn to.
Right.
And for many of us, that then makes us even more present when we are within our four walls, back with our people, because we're filling more
That's
of our
right.
own cup, right? More of
That
our own
is
external,
exactly.
um, like you said, passions and heart that you have. So, um, I
That
appreciate that.
is, thank you, because that comes back to what you said. That comes back exactly to the first part I said about kind of what am I trying to show my daughter, right?
Mhm.
And so, I think it's so easy and so sometimes the vision of motherhood, right? That we receive from our own family of origin, from the culture that we're a part of, from the community that we're a part of, right? So there's so many things that inform us on what does motherhood look like and what does that kind of mean to me. And it's almost like I needed to give myself permission to allow that to be kind of different than people that I'm around and kind of go, gosh, there really is not this like one way, and that everyone has to really figure out how to make it work for the stage that they're in and their personality and their wiring. And man, is this more complex than I
Mhm.
ever thought it would be. And I have a feeling it's like only going to get more complex as she gets older. So we're in for quite the ride.
In your life
Mm-hmm.
history, tell us something that was a challenge for you and you experienced overcoming. And now
Right.
you might be on the other side or still getting on the other side, but and how did you get through it? So this is that
Yeah.
yeah, storytelling. What was something that was challenging that you've gotten through? And I love what you wrote and I can't wait for
Thank
people to
you.
hear about it.
Yeah, thank you. I alluded to this before, but talking about how I had a divorce, and a divorce is something that nobody gets married saying, I'm going to get a divorce, or maybe that's on the table. Maybe that's something that might happen, right? So it was something that was very kind of there was an element of just very unexpectedness to it, and we had a very young child, and it happened. All of it kind of was happening right as I would say before COVID um, began, and kind of the lockdowns and kind of the shutting down of a lot of things. That was very central to that story as well. And I was living, we had been on the East Coast, which is where I'm from, and we had just moved back to California when all of this happened. And it was just like I didn't have friends that were divorced. I didn't have anybody that I could kind of have like well, how
Mhm.
did you do that? Or what do I have to be thinking about? And stuff like that. And I think that part of it, and recognizing that you can't really be quiet at a time like that, as much as you
Mhm.
may not want to discuss that with the people that love you. That is a time when I really need a lot of support. I really need to have my friends and my community, know about this big change to my life. And people wanted to support, and people wanted to see me, and people wanted to do whatever they could, from near and far, really, from people across the country to friends that I already had here in California. And so that was a thing that then I think what I really want to focus on, though, in this story is the part that I also had no role model for, and really had no one to look at as an example, which is how do you have that second chance at love? How do you have, how does that even happen? How do you meet a person
You
in,
can.
again, we're not 20s. We're not in our 20s anymore. We're now full adults. I have a child. I have a profession. I have all these things going on in my life, and I had no role model. So I tried to piece together, even from works of fiction, um, kind of examples of marriages and very healthy relationships, but of people who had already had kind of an act one.
Mhm.
And whether it was they were widowed, or they had a divorce, or, I looked for examples of people who have children, people who are blending families, people who want romance, and they want passion, and they are making a call like, that's not over for me. I really want to try to have that again. And so because I had no examples of that story, that is a story that I want to share more of, and a story that I
Mhm.
deliberately wanted to share with you, and with your audience, because it is possible. It is possible if you, and in my case, I'll keep speaking of myself. I knew that there was so much healing and work to do. There was so much work to do before I would be able to really attract the kind of partner that I wanted. I had to kind of become more of that version of the partner that I wanted. Because I mean, really, there's cautionary tales. I think every week on Netflix gets released a new documentary, okay, of cautionary tales of what happens when you have been through some stuff and you just want to rush past it, and
Mhm.
you're lonely, and you want to be with someone. And I completely understand that. But then you see these examples of then what could come into your life and what you could allow into your life without doing that healing work and that introspective work and really taking that time to kind of understand yourself and understand that kind of a divorce and ending of a marriage is really a death. And so being able to have that grief and work with professionals and trusted people to help a person with that. I keep saying you because it's like I'm picturing someone that I'm talking to right now that's like watching this
It's totally
and listening
fine.
to
Yes.
it. But you know, if there's anything that I can offer someone who may be listening to this and is in that experience, what I want to say is I'm not a celebrity and I'm not an influencer. And I had a 3.5-year-old when I met my husband, who's the person who's now my husband. And if it's possible for me, it is possible for you. Like, period, the end.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that you're saying, and then I would know, Emily, you want to chime in, that I think is so, so important is you're saying I didn't have the role models. I didn't have somebody to look to. I looked wherever I found, but what I did find is people rushing into the next relationship because out of the pain and the loneliness that they're in.
Yes.
And I had a mentor tell me, you know, when you have clients who are going through a divorce, you know, think of it as like, you know, there are tasks of divorce, right? There are tasks that we need to go through. And the first is grieve the loss of what was important to you about the relationship, right? Maybe it was a bad relationship or toxic, or maybe it was so, but at least grieve whatever it was to you. The second is acknowledge and figure out what was my contribution to the failure of the relationship. And you took the time, it sounds like you took the time to do some introspection. You use that word and really and heal from that, and then develop the skills that you need to be independent. And you developed skills to attract the partner that you know, the healthier relationship that you wanted.
That's right.
And then finally, how to, you know, figure out a co-parenting plan that works for you. That's another one we try to help people with. And it sounds like you really took time to go through those tasks rather than rushing in. I appreciate that.
When you go online, people get very, very disheartened. It's a very disheartening experience. It's an experience where you end up learning. I ended up learning so much about myself when I started to date and really able to see what's going on with me that I'm attracting. It seems like this type of person. I kept attracting men who I felt like I was the first date after divorce. Like I was the first. And so they are raw. They are not ready to be dating, let me tell you. And so it was like one and then another one and then another one. And I'm going, we're going to take a break because I need to kind of really now go back and really go, what is it that I am putting out? Whether that is subconscious or conscious, and what are those things and who can I work with to help me figure out what is it that I'm putting out there that is attracting men that are completely not what I'm looking for. And are so they're like in this part of the journey. And I feel like I'm way over here, but maybe we have to kind of take a look at that a little bit.
And did you ever get an answer to that, Andrea?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the answer, it's really because I have such a high like empathy. I have a lot of empathy. And I think that comes across. It came across in the profile, and it came across in like the beginning conversations. I think those men felt like very safe as to like, this can just be someone I'm gonna, rip the Band-Aid off and just kind of, and maybe it doesn't have to be so serious,
Yes.
And then that took me looking at my profile and being like, I need to modify some of this so it's extremely clear what it is that I'm dating with very clear intentions. I'm not dating to just kind of have fun. And so ensuring that I put my money where my mouth is, not just putting it in the profile, because men will not read the profile. I'm here to tell you. Okay. You have to say it. You have to declare that, and you have to be very upfront about those things. And that, even though I'm from New York, it took a little while for
Mm.
me to grow that muscle of I'm going to just actually say what it is that I'm wanting. The right.
That's
Mhm.
great. When you said a few minutes ago, Andrea, about kind of looking for a role model for
Mm,
someone that had been in this spot, right?
yeah.
Of an unexpected divorce and mothering a young daughter at the time,
Yeah.
and how to navigate that. And you looked and you're like, I don't have a frame of reference. I think
That's
we
right.
all do that with different details at different points in our life. And I
Yeah.
love that you pioneered a new ground.
I
You
had
said, I kind
to.
of can't find it. So I'm going to kind of pull from the best of what I
That's
see
right.
around me, and I'm going to get going with it. And I'm going to make sure I'm healed and rebuild myself as a stable, independent
That's
woman and
right.
mother. And you
That's
did the
right.
work and took the time enough that you were like, I can't be with anybody that hasn't,
That's
which is
absolutely right.
great.
And I actually, it was great because then what would happen is were starting to end things very quickly. Either I or that. So it's like no one's wasting time. I'm being very clear and I'm showing you who I am. And so you're knowing you're not the right woman for me. So that's great. So the sooner we get to you're not the right person, the better. Like
Yes.
yeah, that was also such a cool, didn't think so at the time. My ego may not have like appreciated
Mm-hmm.
that at the
Mm-hmm.
time, but to get to a point where I was able to be kind of understood and my goals and what I was desiring kind of understood faster. And also for me to be able to kind of pick out, I'll use the term red flags, kind of pick out those red flags a lot faster. That to me, I was like, I think I'm on my way. Like now
Mm-hmm.
we're really getting going. Yeah.
So it sounds like it took you
Oh,
several passes to
oh,
kind of figure
yes.
out how you wanted to use online dating as a resource.
Oh, it did. It
And
absolutely took a lot of passes. I paid more money than I should have for these there's all these famous like dating coaches and things on Instagram, like on social media, and kind of paid for scripts for texting and like how do you, because you as someone who'd been in a marriage and now is single, it's like it feels that this whole universe felt so odd.
Totally.
And I said to myself, gosh, I feel like I need tools, and those things are great to a certain point, and then I had to really learn to trust myself
mm,
and make a decision and say, you know what, I using these scripts and all these things, that's pretty much like someone knowing not really me if I'm using these scripts.
The right.
So why don't I just start using me and being myself, and I'll find out who's compatible actually very quickly.
that makes me think back to you were talking about your therapist talking about your
Yeah.
words and how important that words were important to you and how
Right.
you would fixate on it. And
Yes.
I'm wondering, I'm like, yeah, it
Yes.
seems like you
There
kind of got to
Yeah.
there's a
that with
connection.
using the coaching and
Yeah.
using these scripts. And then you finally must have gotten to a place of like, I need to
Yeah.
trust myself and I
That's
need to
right.
let go maybe of the fixation on there's
Yes.
got to be right words and more just trust my gut.
Mm.
Is that
Mm.
Yes,
sounding
I
about right?
I had
Okay.
never put that together. So I love that you have that insight, and that
Mm.
you're sharing that with me, because yeah, that's really such a great way of thinking about it. It was wanting there to be a prescription and wanting there to
Yeah.
be, this is the order that I can follow and then I'm going to get this result, right? And
Mhm.
dating doesn't work that way. In fact, a lot of things don't work that way.
Mm.
Right. Right.
So
Um,
true.
okay, so how do you think, like we have a question in the questionnaire of like, what were the lessons you learned in overcoming the challenge? I think you've talked about some of
Yeah.
those, but how do you think that this helped you develop resilience? Because that's what the podcast
Oh,
is really
yes.
focused on, is
Mm-hmm.
developing resilience is like you have to go through hard things to be
That's
more
right.
resilient. So how do you think,
Sucks.
yeah, it does. It's hard. So how do you think this helped you build resilience, this process of
Right.
back in
So
the field?
resilience, like the building of that muscle, I had to really grow that muscle of
Mhm.
I'm going to have trust in myself and I'm going to learn almost like relearn who this woman is now
Mhm.
and what are her desires and wants, and we're going to pay attention to them in a brand new way. The second thing is this one, I hate to say it, but I think it's when you have no other choice and
Mhm.
you can't get out of it. You can't, go on vacation and kind of like go and escape the situation that you're in. It is something it is happening. And when you're in that situation, sometimes you really don't have any choice but to move through it. There really is no other way. And you, believe me, it is a gift you want to return. You do not, I particular, did not want to be going through this. And definitely had many moments of so much anger at God, if you're a person of faith, just as to how did this happen? And so there is so much to it that is so difficult that it's like you can't see the benefits that are going to
Mhm.
come. And that's
Mhm.
very hard for other people to explain to someone else. It is
Mhm.
extraordinarily hard to offer hope, but I hope that I can do that in this conversation if someone is watching. Hope can be so complicated and actually cause a lot of pain depending on where you are in this journey. And so I had friends that held on hope for me, and they would tell me that. They would say, I'm praying for you for these things. And I said, yeah, because I can't even pray for that. So
Mhm.
thank you for holding that hope and holding that prayer for me, because I am not even in a place where I can access hope for the things that you're praying for me for.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I think going back to
You
how do
can
you overcome it, it's
you
going
can
through it, not skipping the
Mhm.
steps. And knowing that if you skip the steps, there could be bigger consequences later.
you can
And I don't say that as like this warning, this voice of doom. It's
Mhm.
to offer encouragement that this is possible. You can get through this. You have been through some hard things. You can get through this hard thing, even if it seems like you absolutely can't. Because it is really, it is, anybody who's talked to you on this podcast had these experiences that have defined them afterwards.
Mhm.
And, but when you're in it, that's so hard to access.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You're right. You don't know. It's really not until after that you can say,
Hmm.
wow, I am who I am because I went through that hard thing. But when
That's
you're in the
right.
middle of it, you're just hanging on, you know? And I
That's
love
right.
that you said people were holding hope for you because you couldn't
Hmm.
hold it for yourself. And so
That's
one
right.
of our pillars of thriving is leaning into our community, like leaning into the supportive people in our lives. And it sounds like you were really doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
That's
Okay.
that's amazing. I also heard you say you couldn't stay quiet. That is a powerful statement because we do have things in life that
Yeah,
um, kind of knock the wind out of us.
that's right.
But if we stay quiet, right, then
Yeah,
we know that it can paralyze us,
that's
right? We
right.
can devolve as a human. We
Oh,
can be,
right.
start suppressing everything, shutting down. And so what you said is, I couldn't stay quiet.
Right.
And so we know that then all the difficult emotions that we all struggle to sometimes allow ourselves to feel,
Yes.
like shame.
That's right.
And, it can't last when it's seen, when it's
That's right.
exposed. And so that to me is huge, what you're saying, and a great reminder to all of us, whatever challenges we're in, to be able to know that we have to give voice sometimes to that which is trying to silence us.
Yeah, I'm so glad you kind of picked that out because just recently, my daughter, at times she's very loyal to her father. She's very much a daddy's girl, and having a stepdad is not easy sometimes. And she is the biggest fan of her older brothers and older sister. That has been the best thing for her. Like, she was like, sign me up to be a little sister. Like, this only child thing is garbage. She was thrilled. And the kind of the piece to that is what I do with her, and I try to model with her, and I don't always, is if she's going to have a tantrum and she's going to have a meltdown about something, we're going to revisit that later. And she doesn't want to revisit it. She really kind of resists wanting to. And then recently when we did this and we revisited, she's like, I feel so much better. And I said, yeah, that's what talking about these things, it may be hard to do, but then we feel better, afterwards. So trying to show her that, because she may not be, in her wiring, someone who wants to be like her mom and talk about all these feelings. So we're going to have to figure out another way.
I really like also the way you're making me think of just great parenting, quite honestly. So, I mean, when you are acknowledging, like, she may be different than me.
Yeah.
She may be different than me. I like to talk about things. I like to get them out. It's helpful for me, but not everyone's wired that way. And so just acknowledging, yeah, she's different, and I need to parent her in that difference. And still, I am the older, wiser mother that needs to show that, yeah, sometimes keeping things to yourself makes it harder. And so that it seems like, we grow with our children. I see that with you.
You're right.
You're growing, and like, as our children grow and as we mother, or as we parent, as we father, we are changing because we're learning from just the process of parenting.
Oh,
right.
My gosh. I love that. I've never heard anyone say that before. And I really love that. Thank you. We grow with our children. Yes, absolutely. If we let ourselves. So
yes.
Yes. If we let
totally
ourselves.
true.
And I think that brings me to a quote that I want to just put out here, because I highlighted it in your questionnaire that you said, and I just want to say what you said, if that's okay. You said, you were talking about your daughter, and you said, I want her to see that women are complex. You've told us that change is possible. And that was a thing you said it was hard for you to see at your darkest moment, season. It was hard for you to see. Other people could have hope for you, but change is possible. And then you said, and that we are responsible for how we show up. Do you remember writing that?
I don't, but I sounds like me.
We are responsible for how we show up. And, I think that as Emily and I talked about this podcast, and one thing that is important is that we all go through hard things, right? This is a part of the human story. It's just a part of who it is, of who we are. Life is not easy. We go through really, really hard things. And we have a choice whether or not we become cynical, jaded, angry, isolated. And we've all probably tried that, done that, I know I have. And it's not really, it doesn't feel good to be cynical and jaded and isolated, and right. Or we can allow these difficult experiences in life to teach us about ourselves, about others, and expand us. Right. And it certainly seems like that is something that you have done with this amazing story that you've shared about going through divorce,
Mhm.
having to become a single parent. And then what you really want to focus on is the challenges you overcame in getting back in the dating scene
That's
and
right.
doing it in an intentional way. And
That's right.
now, a year under your belt of being married, to a wonderful guy. I do know this
Yes.
guy. I have known him for 30 some years.
Yes.
Oh,
Me too.
So I think it's just wonderful that you have been willing to share your story with us.
Thank you.
Um, one,
agreed.
yeah, go
And
ahead, Emily.
just again, being open to find love is not, it
Yes.
takes a certain
No,
courage
it
because
does.
clearly you're committed to your daughter, you're committed to yourself and your own purpose. And
That's
that
right.
took a lot of courage to be open and to do the work, like you said,
Oh,
with
Emily.
your own therapist and in your own support circles to say, I understand now my own role in
Hmm.
my first marriage so that I can be in a healthier spot and,
Yes,
can be more whole to bring even more to the table now.
that's right.
So that
Oh
gives,
man, that's the courage part is that it's very scary and definitely after a hurt, anybody, a man or a woman, it does not matter.
yes.
You want to protect that heart, and everyone builds up their walls around all their most vulnerable parts, and those walls look different depending on the person. And that's another part of dating is challenging with that,
Mhm.
and to say the least, because again, we're not talking about meeting your beau in college and you're all and you're all new and you're kind of new together. Now you're talking about people who have been through it and have a lot to work through, and who have children, most of them that I dated.
Mhm.
And you kind of, gosh, you have to rearm, you kind of have to find that courage almost every day. And when you don't have it, get off the apps. Get off the
Mm,
apps. You're not going to bring the right person in if you are in a place of, I call it like when I'm more of a porcupine or a hedgehog. And that's how I picture myself. Like I've got all my quills out. Why would I think that I'm going to attract somebody that
mhm,
is worth partnering with if I'm
mhm.
in that state? And if you're in that state and you're listening to this, that is so okay. And it is like necessary and it is part of the journey that you're on. But it
Mhm.
takes that, finding that courage to open
Yes.
yourself and be vulnerable. It is a lot.
Well, and I wonder if this is kind of the growth gift that you would give the audience, because you've said that. We always ask everybody,
Yes.
what is a growth gift that you want to,
Right.
if you had to package it into one word or a
Mm.
statement, what is the growth gift that you have received from going through this challenge that you would want to give people? But I wonder if
Yeah.
you just said it. Is there anything else that you would say other than courage?
Gosh. You can, I just, yeah, I'll pull out a couple things that I've said throughout. So I think one of the threads I talked about was about comparison, and how if you're in a trap where you're comparing your dating journey to some other person who's single, and they also went through divorce or whatever, and you're comparing, how well is she doing? At date, I mean, those are just things that they are gonna knock you off course.
Okay.
And it is just going to be much harder to really show who you are and the gifts that you have to give if you're
Mhm.
stuck in a comparison. So I mentioned that earlier, so I wanted to pull that out.
Yeah.
And we talked about how courage is something you may have to find every single day anew.
Hmm.
And on those days where you don't have it, just put the app down. You don't have to respond. You don't have to swipe today. You don't have to make it, your job to kind of be doing that on a daily basis. Take a lot of breaks. Um, And then the third thing that I really wanted people to leave with is the fact that if it's possible for me, it's possible for you as well. Because I'm not, again, I cobbled together, it was like fictional characters, celebrities, influencers, and I'm none of those. I'm none of those. And I was able to find the kind of marriage that I always dreamed of, that I at one point did not think was possible for me to have. I now have that, and is one of the biggest blessings that I have been given. And I worked really hard for it.
Yeah. I've witnessed that. I can say in the years that I've known you, which has not been long, but I've known your husband since college, and I've witnessed that work, kind of from the sidelines, not really in the center, but you've shared enough for me to know that you have been very intentional. You have not given up on yourself, and you didn't give up on the possibility that this could happen for you, and that's really paid off. And thank you for sharing that journey, and I do hope it's encouraging to someone out there.
I really do hope so.
Thanks for joining us at Thrivist, where talk transforms and builds resilience in an unpredictable world.